Last session of the day. I hope everyone has a drink. All right. So we are here to talk about purpose-driven disruptive strategies, and I have a very full stage of purpose-driven men and women. So I'd like to open it up, just going down the row here with who you are, what your business is, and what purpose-driven means to you and your company.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Jones. I am the co-founder of VERB. We are a brand experience agency that's all about reimagining how people experience and interact with your brand, really everything beyond traditional media.
Hello, everyone. Tim Huelskamp, CEO and co-founder of 1440. We're a knowledge company for the intellectually curious. Our core product is a daily newsletter that rounds up all the best news and knowledge across all the verticals. We have about 4.5 million intellectually curious Americans as readers that love to be healthy, wealthy, and wise. And we partner with brands to drive awareness and then tens of thousands of conversions to our partners every week.
All right. My name is Ben Mand. I'm the CEO of Guayaki Yerba Mate. There's some product there if you want some Yerba. Anybody familiar with Guayaki Yerba Mate? Raise your hand. You know it? Oh, okay. All right. We got a lot of lovers in the house. Okay. I think one thing, so I'll tell you a little bit more about what it is. Most people think it's actually a tea. It's not a tea, but it's very similar to a tea. It's part of the holly family. So different plant species, but like tea, the leaf is caffeinated. So we harvest it, we mill it, dry it, we sell it loose. And so it's traditionally consumed in South America, especially Paraguay, Uruguay, Argentina, Brazil. They drink it in a gourd with a bombilla straw, and that's how they consume it. So we sell it that way as well. But obviously what's more popular up here in the United States is the can, so we brew it into beverages. And so, so for us, and for me specifically, purpose-driven it's about doing something more than making money. And I do believe that business can be a force for good. And so it is about being, instead of extractive, building. How do you, for us, the regenerative mindset is, how do you leave farmers? How do you leave the environment? How do you leave everybody that you interact with along the way in a better spot than when you met with them? So that's it.
And I'm Melanie Masarin. I'm the founder and CEO of Ghia. We're a non-alcoholic spritz company. We actually have some product on the table over there. And our goal is to take back the word drinking from alcohol. So really to take back, to make the social occasion more inclusive to non-drinkers.
Thank you. So I'm a marketer, and as most marketers do, I love some really jargony words, and I think purpose-driven sometimes teeters on that kind of like that jargony language. And so I'd love to understand what it really means to be a purpose-driven brand. And as we think about generations and how people interpret purpose-driven differently, how do you resonate across different generations to be purpose-driven? Whatever that means to you and your company.
Want to start with me? Or is that right?
Please.
You're looking at me. Okay. So I hit on purpose-driven a little bit. I'll talk a little bit more specifically what it means for us. So we are 100% shade-grown yerba mate. And for us, we start with regenerative farming. So all of our yerba mate is regenerative organic, certified at the gold level. And so what that means, so regenerative versus monoculture, it is about biodiversity. So having different types of plants, having bees, animals. It's about recreating nature's natural ecosystem. When you work with nature and allow that diversity, you get better soil health, you get better than root structure, you get better yields from your farms. It's powerful from a farmer standpoint. It's like you start eliminating chemicals, you start eliminating these types of things, and you can actually raise the income of farmers. And so we are also fair for life. So when we buy that yerba mate, we pay a minimum of 25% premium over the market. We also do studies on like what is a livable wage, and in some markets, the livable wage is above that 25% premium. So then we pay the livable wage. So in some cases, we're paying more than double the market rate, because for us, it's important that this is these people's livelihoods, right? In addition to that, we work very closely with indigenous communities. And I think this is one thing that has set, for me, been a profound experience with Guayaki versus maybe other brands I've run in the past. And that is, some of these communities we've been working with for over 20 years. And so they're part of our family. And so, it starts with just not only growing and harvesting and we buy it, but we work with these communities on planting seedlings, right? So doing that and then paying them to plant. We've also built small little factories where they can start to dry it. So now they're not just harvesting, they're actually running a factory. They get a tolling rate. They've got an engineer who, oversees various things. There's workers on the line and stuff. So building back these communities that have been marginalized for centuries. So those are just a couple ways on how we work, but it makes our product special. And what we feel and what I fundamentally believe is consumers nowadays, there's always been a gap between, saying what you'll do and what you actually do. We are now seeing consumers starting to recognize, what, we can't wait for government. We can't wait for other things. The way I have to start making an impact is with my wallet. And I believe that is the future of business. And that's what makes these types of businesses special.
So we know that purpose-driven gets thrown around a lot as a term. How are you driving a purpose-driven company, and what does that mean in connecting with your audiences?
For sure. I think you touched on this a little bit. I don't see purpose-driven. Purpose-driven is a bit of a buzzword, but I don't think it's necessarily in conflict with business. I think for us, it's a lot more about impact. And actually, the more cans we sell, the more beverages we put out in the world, the more socially accepted it will be for people to feel comfortable not drinking. And so there's a lot of alignment. Our product is 100% natural, which is not the case for a lot of the alcohol companies, which don't even have ingredients on the label. So it's really a win-win-win to make people feel better, give options that are healthier. We never preach for people not to drink. We just want people that decide not to feel like they belong. We're a zero plastic company, so we don't use any plastic at any point for us. Our cans are 100% recyclable. And so it's how can you leave it better than you found it, but also along the way, with every step, be very intentional so that your economic incentives are aligned with those of your customers, with those of your providers, with those of everyone that sort of comes in contact with us at Ghia.
Yeah, thank you. I love what you said about being really intentional and having a really authentic purpose with your customers. We have a room full of people that work for companies, and I can't imagine anyone would say that their business doesn't have a purpose or doesn't want to be more purpose-driven. But that said, we know that not everyone is doing this really well. So I would love to hear a little bit more about what common mistakes you see among people who are trying to drive purpose-driven companies but are not necessarily hitting the mark.
I can jump in. I think that one of the most important things when we think about purpose-driven is being clear about who you are, who you're for, what you stand for. And that's the foundation of everything. And what we see in terms of missteps, one-offs, hopping on trends, you see something trending and there might be a discussion in the office we need to post something. And so I think that's where you often see those mistakes, because then there's not that follow through. And then in turn, that's when you get called out on social.
Yeah.
We don't want to be trendy. We want to be real.
Yeah, to build on that, at 1440, we have 16 principles we look at every day, or maybe not every day, but often to see if we're aligning with our mission. Things like think in decades, delight the customer, treat your employees like royalty, and then even things like trying to be profitable. And I think there's a lot of companies out there that maybe when they're building new products and thinking about new strategies, they kind of miss those things. They might be building products that their customers don't want, with midnight oil from their employees, and that never have a chance at profitability. And I think that's where you get some pretty scary stuff.
I'll double down on what you were saying. I think you have to have your North Star as a business. What do you really stand for? Stick to that. And don't comment on things that are just not part of your North Star. People want authenticity. People are not looking for you to, butt into a conversation that you typically would not, but you're just trying to get, jump on the bandwagon. People will call you out for that. So just stick to your guns on what you really stand for.
I love that. And I think particularly with this group in companies that are really budding and growing at a very rapid pace, how do you balance who you are and your North Star with being really disruptive and being really bold in what you grow into? How do you kind of make sure that you're staying true to yourself while also stepping out into a really disruptive space for growth?
All right, I'll go first. So there have been a number of businesses I've been a part of where I've had, make a decision on, do we launch into this? Do we follow this fad or follow this kind of where things are going? And, what has always served me right is it's always about stepping back and understanding who you are. What's that relationship you have with your consumer? What are they expecting from you? And does this make sense? Does this fit in, right? And there have been times I've passed on things. I'm like, and my focus is I will deliver long-term success. I often tell my board, I'm not trying to maximize your short-term sales because I would do some different things that are not necessarily healthy from a business standpoint or how you run a business. What is important is delivering long-term success and staying true. So it goes back to that North Star. It's also understanding where you should spend your time innovating, how you market and whatnot. Just, really stick true to that.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to remember that being purpose-driven isn't everything, and it's often not the first thing that people use when they're making a decision. You still have to have customer centricity be, at the forefront of everything that you do. You have to have the best product. Like, because Ghia is non-alcoholic, because it's all natural, doesn't mean that people are going to gravitate towards it. We think a lot about, like, what does the can look like? How do we create, like, a brand environment that makes people feel like they want to be a part of it? Because so much of the world of alcohol has been very masculine, and we've been conditioned to think that alcohol is the life of the party. And so first things first is our customer. And then if we get more of these customers, we'll have a bigger impact. And that's kind of our purpose. But we just have to make the best product always.
So I want to go back to something that, Ben, you said, which I think is really interesting. I work in the quick service industry. It's incredibly competitive, incredibly fast-paced. And I am all too aware that every day I go to work and every day I'm accountable for some sales and I'm accountable for a number. And I don't think anybody in this room isn't out to make money in some capacity, right? No matter who or what your role is. So I would love to hear more about how you balance this long-term purpose with also delivering what you need to deliver on a daily basis in order to make money.
One thing I'm sure the brand marketers can chime in. I think that one key element in terms of balancing those sales goals with purpose is figuring out how do those tie together so that they don't feel mutually exclusive. I think sometimes when we think about purpose, it almost feels a little bit frivolous and like a nice to have and an add-on. But I think being able to make the business case and find those attribution opportunities to show how purpose can in turn impact the bottom line. It may not be a short-term metric, but it can absolutely impact the business.
Yeah, to build on that, I would say one of the things we try to focus on is how to think in decades, as I said earlier. And sometimes you have to do some pretty painful things in the short term to be thinking out 10 years in advance, and it hurts, and maybe you want to get some revenue now, but it might be bad for the brand, and you really have to look past that. Another thing I've noticed is I used to be a venture capitalist before 1440, and these markets out there are very, very, very massive, and if you can have like a product that talks to someone in a very unique way, these companies get very, very big. So if you can remain disciplined and deliver for your customer and think long term, magic tends to happen, but you have to be disciplined in those early days when you're building the business.
Yeah, I'll just build on. So one, there'll always be things you should never do that are not part of your brand DNA. So always be aware of that. When you're making decisions for sales and profit and whatnot, there are some things you will never do, and obviously stick to that. But I tend to think of my decisions as a portfolio of decisions, because if you try to maximize impact and sales and profit on every single decision, you're going to get paralyzed because sometimes they fight against one another. there. And so, for me, I have gotten very comfortable. There are some decisions I make that are purely impact. There are some decisions that are purely profit or purely sales. But what I hold myself to, we hold ourselves as a company to, is on the whole, as you step back, as we're making decisions, how are we making decisions, and are we fulfilling what we need to fulfill across the board? And I think one final thing I'd state there is we are often a very short-term, short-sighted set of businesses, and it's really important to be making decisions for the here and now as well as for the future, because those are the seeds that you're gonna harvest a year down the road, 2 years down the road, or whatever it may be, and you need to have an assortment of decisions that balance short and long term.
I mean, echoing what everybody said here, I think that it's like really staying true to yourself and making sure that the short-term economic gains don't necessarily dilute your brand, dilute the world that you're kind of striving toward. And I think that there's a marketing calendar that, in a content world now, we have to constantly feed this content machine. There's always something new to talk about, and that can be quite difficult when you have one product and you're trying to build a forever brand. The expectations were very different 10 years, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when the internet didn't capture so much of our very rapid attention like this. And so for us, it's about depth a lot more, and it's about meeting new people, talking about the product, talking about what makes it special without launching 20 different new flavors, adding a bunch of sugar to things. And so there are moments in time like the holidays when we create products to delight people and to bring them into our world. But overall, I think it's about making sure that we are focused on building a world, redefining indulgence, redefining being together, redefining, the customer being the hero as opposed to what's in the glass being the hero.
Yeah, I think, in a world that is increasingly data-driven, increasingly technologically driven, we are all too inundated with a wide variety of KPIs. And Ben, I like what you said about sometimes, you can kill yourself, trying to do one thing with another, right? Like you're competing sometimes. When you take a step back and think about if you're successful in your purpose-driven model, what are the types of KPIs or ways that you measure success in being purpose-driven?
So a few ways. There are measures all across the board, right? Certainly some of the basics for us are number of trees that we've planted. So part of what we're trying to do is rebuild the South American rainforest. And so how many trees that we're planting is one key measure that I look at. But it's also, we've got some work to do. Like how do we get the entire, our yerba mate is regenerative organic, but not all the ingredients in here are regenerative organic. How do we I'm working on our long-term plan. Like when can we confidently get this to be 100% regenerative organic certified. So there are milestones that, and KPIs that you track now, but then also what you're trying to get to. So really stepping back and thinking about what are those things most important. I took over the company a year ago. One of the things we're doing also is just employee benefits and making sure, parental leave was, in my mind, not as strong as it needed to be. So how do we make sure we're supporting people in those moments? So it's just looking across the board and identifying areas where you're not, and then measuring, getting to where you need to be.
I think for us, it's quantitative and qualitative. So on the quantitative side, we have KPIs. We're adding 300,000 new subscribers a month. We're doing over $1 million in revenue per employee. But one of the things that tends to be a leading indicator of that future success is, are we actually listening to the customer? And are they talking to us? And are they telling us what they're feeling and telling us how we can address their needs? So I think that's when that stopped. We've been doing this for 7 years. And I think when that starts to go away, I'm going to get really nervous. When you don't hear from your customer, they're telling you, I like your product, something's wrong with your product. They're constantly giving you that feedback and you're listening to it. When that disappears, right.
So you all clearly have purposes in how you're driving your businesses. I heard a little bit about how you're driving purpose within your own company, but also how you're communicating. How do you balance what you communicate to customers in terms of your core brand identity versus like more tactical needs that you have to communicate, whether it's a new product or whether it's a new initiative? Are those two things one and the same, or how do you balance that kind of tactical need to push a particular product versus who your brand is at its core?
I think that Melanie made a really great point. When you think about social and how brands are showing up, there are a lot of opportunities to share what you're doing. And so as you're balancing where your paid media might be going, that might be more product focused, but I think social is a really great opportunity to do more of that long form storytelling where you can incorporate some of the social elements, just so it doesn't get buried on the CSR page of your company website. I think that taking advantage of some of those other channels to still share those stories and amplify those messages, even if it doesn't replace those primary points that you need to hit when it comes to the product specifics.
Yeah, I love that. And we've talked a lot about authenticity. We've talked a lot about social. Tell me a little bit about how you're resonating with like the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha, super hot topic right now. I'm curious kind of what being authentic means to them and how you're communicating to them maybe differently than some of your other audiences.
I'll start. We have a pretty young audience. Yes, people of all ages enjoy yerba mate. I would say in the can specifically, it's very popular with college students and then already in high school, maybe even some junior high. We don't market to any of them. In my mind, you have to be an adult for us to market to you anyway. But it is, for us, it is about being always authentic and honest. It's just fundamentally the best practice in leading a company as well as in interacting with anybody that we interact with. We have an interesting, I have an interesting mandate. Certainly I have to drive more impact and make and build this regenerative business, but I also have to grow it, right? And what's interesting is if you talk to any of our loyal consumers, they want us to stay small forever. And so, it is like, how do you scale cults? Because we have a very loyal following, and but it is just about always being authentic. And it means, as we're building this long range plan and we're talking, with investors, it's like, it isn't about running big TV ads and stuff like this. This is a very ground up kind of authentic. It's about cans and hands. It's about doing festivals, music, and things like that. And going back to your earlier question about like purpose and when do you communicate that versus not, for us, we're building a category. So most people don't know what it is. So what it is and what it does is really what we talk about first and foremost. And I do believe that then, it's longer format sessions like this. It's in PR. It's it's an article in the new in a magazine or on a website. It's where we have longer format is when you can go deeper on it, or starting to bring the story to life on the back of the can. When people understand what you stand for, they become more loyal and then they advocate on your behalf. But it is not often a trial driving a lever for us. So, I think that's, what I would say is purpose is more about driving the advocacy, the loyalty and the advocacy.
Well, I have had the benefit of speaking with you all even before we got on stage, and I'm super inspired by all of your businesses and what you're doing. I'm curious, as we kind of wrap this up, I'm curious what brand you find really interesting, really inspiring from a purpose-driven perspective, and tell us a little bit about why.
For me, I think Bobby, the infant baby formula brand, is one of the most incredible purpose-driven brands. It's in their DNA, even just like you said, the product itself can be purpose-driven, but they also have Bobby for Change, which is their social impact and policy arm. And it's not just about free cans, and they do like interventions when there are natural disasters or even with the formula shortage, but they also work on parental leave and policy change and advocacy work. So I would say for sure Bobby is a North Star in terms of a purpose-driven brand. And as we think broader about the category of purpose beyond just save the children, feed the homeless, save the environment. Like there are a lot of ways that you can be a purpose-driven brand, and we can widen that aperture a bit.
I support an organization in Chicago called Fifth Star, and it's a philanthropic venture fund. And what's really interesting there is too many founders look like me. We need to get more founders out there that come from different backgrounds. There's this thing called the friends and family round. When you're raising your company, you would basically go to your aunts and uncles and you get $23,000 on average to launch your business. Not everyone has access to that. And this organization is building a philanthropic venture fund where money goes into these companies and actually gives more underrepresented founders shots to launch their businesses. And they're laser focused on that one problem and like its big impact on the wealth gap and also just for the entire business ecosystem. So really admire them.
Very cool.
I'm going to go with one that's often stated, but I'm going to use it for a different reason that's more personal to me, and that's Patagonia. I think we all know Patagonia, and they are probably the most recognizable purpose-driven businesses. But why I share them is like I want Guayaki, Patagonia, I want there to be a cohort of exceptionally successful businesses that are driving real change from a people and planet standpoint, but are really successful financially in all the old ways that we've considered that. And the reason why I want that to be successful is because that when there's so much success there, capital markets reward that and more money goes into those types of businesses, which then means more entrepreneurs start businesses of this type. And that is how we really drive change. So, if we can make Guayaki and others really successful, to me, that ushers the way for many, many more.
Are you going to give all your equity to the people like Patagonia did?
I wish I could. I don't have that much.
I think for us, Whole Foods is one, obviously based in Austin. Actually, Whole Foods Lamar is the top seller of Ghia in the country. So we recently launched at Whole Foods and, they have really just made better food available to more people. They've managed to scale quality and in a way that's very impressive. And then all the companies that are able to really change consumer habits. And, I think when you look at global warming, I think it's really easy sometimes to be discouraged and feel like you don't have any impact. And there are so many companies that say like Mill or Lomi or these, at-home composting services or even Blue Land are like, no, you can have like a 30%, impact if you compost your food and emit less methane. And there's just so many of these companies that kind of shift the responsibility and change the habits of customers. And I find that very inspiring. So I hope that someday we can do that too.
Yeah, that's amazing. I said this before, but I'm going to say it again. I feel super inspired by all of you and all of your examples too. So I can't think of a better way to end the day. So thank you very much.
Thank you.